Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Natira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Jamun Tira Banachari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, in the fourth canto, the 14th chapter, the 17th verse, in the story of King Venu, we will be reading that verse. You all have them there, including the invisible ladies. You see the invisible ladies? See? Can you see the invisible ladies? No, okay. Rajan, Asadu, Ametyabhyas, Koradibhya, Praja, Nripa, Rakshan, Yata, Palim, Grinan, Iha, Preja, Cha, Mudate, Rajan Asadu Amityas Piyas, Koradibhya Prajanripaha, Rakshanyata Balim Grinan, Iha Precha Chamodate, Rajan Asud Ametyabhyas, Koradibhya Prajanripaha, Rakshanyata Balim Grinan, Iha Precha Chamodate, Rajan Asud Rajan Sadhu Ametyabhyas, Koradibhya Prajanripaha, Rakshanyata Balim Grinan, Iha Precha Chamodate. Repeat. Invisible ladies? Oh, they're also speechless. Okay, word for word. Rajan, O king. Asadu, mischievous. Amitibya, from ministers. Kora adibya, from thieves and rogues. Praja, the citizens. Nripa, the king. Rakshan, protecting. Yata, accordingly as. Balim, taxes. Grinan, accepting. Iha, in this world. Precha, after death. Cha, also. Modate, enjoys. Translation. The saintly persons continued. When the king protects the citizens from the disturbances of mischievous ministers, as well as from thieves and rogues, he can, by virtue of such pious activities, accept taxes given by his subjects. Thus a pious king can certainly enjoy himself in this world, as well as in the life after death. We'll repeat that together. The saintly persons continued. When the king protects the citizens from the disturbances of mischievous ministers, as well as from thieves and rogues, he can, by virtue of such pious activities, accept taxes given by his subjects. Thus, a pious king can certainly enjoy himself in this world, as well as in the life after death. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The duty of a pious king is described very nicely in this verse. His first and foremost duty is to give protection to the citizens from thieves and rogues, as well as from ministers who are no better than thieves and rogues. Formerly, ministers were appointed by the king and were not elected. Consequently, if the king is not very pious or strict, the ministers would become thieves and rogues and exploit the innocent citizens. It is the king's duty to see that there is no increase of thieves and rogues, either in the government secretariat or in the departments of public affairs. If a king cannot give protection to the citizen from thieves and rogues, both in the government service and public affairs, he has no right to exact taxes from them. They call that taxation without representation. America revolted on that. In other words, the king or government that taxes can levy taxes from the citizens only if the king or government is able to give protection to the citizens from thieves and rogues. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a description of these thieves and rogues in government service. As stated, Prajaste Bakshishanti Malecha Rajanya Rupinaha. These proud Malechas, persons who are less than Sudras, representing themselves as kings, will tyrannize their subjects. And their subjects, on the other hand, will cultivate the most vicious practices. Thus, practicing evil habits and behaving foolishly, the subjects will be like their rulers. The idea is that in the democratic days of Kali Yuga, the general population will fall down to the standard of Sudras. As stated, Kalo Sudra Sambhava. Practically the whole population of the world will be Sudra. A Sudra is a fourth-class man who is only fit to work for the three higher social castes. Being fourth class, Sudras are not very intelligent. Since the population is fallen in these democratic days, they can only elect a person in their category. But a government cannot run very well when it is run by Sudras. The second class of men, known as Kshatriyas, are especially meant for governing a country under the direction of saintly persons, who are supposed to be very intelligent. In other words, in Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Dwapara Yuga, the general populace was not so degraded, and the head of government was never elected. The king was the supreme executive personality, and if he caught any ministers stealing like thieves and rogues, he would at once have them killed or dismissed from service. As it was the duty of the king to kill thieves and rogues, it was similarly his duty to immediately kill dishonest ministers in government service. By such strict vigilance, the king could run the government very well, and his citizens would be happy to have such a king. The conclusion is that unless the king is perfectly able to give protection to the citizens from thieves and rogues, he has no right to levy taxes upon the citizens for his own sense gratification. However, if he gives all protection to the citizens and levies taxes on them, he can live very happily and peacefully in this life, and at the end of this life be elevated to the heavenly kingdom, or even to the Vaikunthas, where he will be happy in all respects. So they cannot levy taxes unless they're protecting the citizens and doing good for them. America revolted against England on that idea of taxation without representation. That the leaders need to represent the people by putting forward their interests, by making sure that there is water and electricity, and that they can be protected from thieves and rogues, whether they're inside the government or whether they're just average citizens. Just like a police cars in America. Does it say on them here what it does there to protect and serve? Doesn't say that on the car here, does it? No. There it says to protect and serve. So police are very heavy there, but they don't tolerate crimes. Sometimes they go too far, but at the same time they don't tolerate crimes. So the leaders, to collect the taxes, must perform some service for it. Just like if a man comes to repair the pump in the moat, he can't give you a bill unless he actually repairs the pump, yes? And the people get paid for trimming the garden and doing the work, but they actually have to do the work if they're going to be paid. They can't just show up at the end of the month and say, I want my money now. They actually have to do it. So the government is beholden in the same way. So it mentioned here the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the last canto on this planet. It's said in the Brahmaloka, the higher planet. This Bhagavatam here has 18,000 verses. There's 1,000,000 verses on the Brahmaloka planet. What do you think of that? 1,000,000 verses. Prabhupada says in some purports that because the pastimes of Krishna, if the people are more advanced on a higher planet, when Krishna goes there, the pastimes are more advanced. So there's more that are there. Maybe one of you can write down the other 982,000 verses we don't have, the ones that are on Brahmaloka. Can someone write those down for me? You have a pen and paper, right? How much paper will you need for 982,000? One big one, right? So I found some of those verses from the 12th canto. Text 38 says, uncivilized caretakers dedicated to irreligious and unrealistic practices. They have fierce tempers, competing for dominion, allow their subjects hardly any economic freedom. They're dedicated to irreligious and unrealistic practices. They do things that are against religious principles, and they have unrealistic ideas. You see leaders in many countries say that we're going to decrease taxes and increase the benefits. And this is unrealistic because the taxation has to come from income somewhere. And so if you try to increase the spending and decrease the taxes, it won't come to. And it says they hardly allow them any economic freedom. People go to school and they learn all kinds of things, but they hardly know how the economic system works. They hardly know the differences, like in this country. If the currency drops down in half, you lost half your money. Things become more expensive because the currency is going down. And so hardly any economic freedom is offered to the people. People think they'll get economic freedom by just being given some small handouts. But the real economic freedom is when they work for people who can employ them properly. And when they make enough money and they know how to put some aside for investment. They need to be educated in these manners. People make huge amounts of money and they spend more than they make, end up with nothing. So they're not given this kind of education. In verse 39, it says, the idea here is that, in some of the countries they talk about the trickle-down economics, which is you have the rich people get all the money and they trickle a little down, but I don't want to get trickled on. This is, it doesn't work as well as they say. So in text 40, it says, these barbarians in the guise of kings will devour the citizenry, murdering innocent women, children, cows, and Brahmins, and coveting the wives and property of other men. They will be erratic in their moods, have little strength of character, and be short-lived. Indeed, not purified by any Vedic rituals and lacking in the practice of regulative principles, they will be completely covered by the modes of passion and ignorance. And text 41, citizens governed by these low-class kings will imitate the character, behavior, and speech of their rulers. Harassed by their leaders and each other, they will all suffer ruination. So like we were talking yesterday in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna says, whatever great men. Now the great men, we would think as people who are great. Somebody may be a humble sage, but a great person means like someone who's a leader. If he's put in a position, he's considered to be great. But if you put a dog on the king's throne, even if he's called King Dog or Dog King, if you throw a shoe, he will still chase it. It says that whatever the great men do, the common men will follow. And whatever exemplary acts he does, the common people will pursue those. So they follow what the leaders do. They usually pick and choose between them, though. It seems like if the leader has a bad habit, they follow it. And if the leader doesn't have that bad habit, they they choose to do it anyway. Now, which of the last ones that ran for president drank alcohol in America? Say the last 4 presidents, which of them drank alcohol? What? None of them. Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden. And that's why all the people didn't drink alcohol, right? Was that it? Bush had 2 terms. Obama had 2 terms. That's 16. Trump had 1 term. That's 20. And Biden's been has 23 years. So the people didn't drink, or they did anyway. So it seems like they may not follow the example, but if the example's bad, then they will surely follow it, right? It's amazing how that works. But that's the problem, is a leader needs to be someone who sets an example. And we see this prediction in the 12th canto. We see how the leaders are. They figure out how to get some benefits for themselves, but don't think of how to make the country better. Now, some of them may do this, like in Dubai. Boy, they stop criminals. You feel safe walking the street there. But they're a little bit strict. They're not as strict as some of the other countries, but they make sure people feel safe walking down the street. And you can feel it. Even in India, they may pick your pockets, but violent crimes, they come down on hard. And here somehow they haven't pushed so hard to stop the violent crimes, have they? Does somebody campaign on we're going to stop crime? They do? Who spoke about it? Well, particularly, can you think of anybody that made a statement? What's that? Yes. Not recently. Who? There was a march. Yes. And what's his name? To find out. But he had a march against violence. See, that's a start, huh? What is it? He's African? Indian. Oh. You do, see, yeah. And people catch on to it because everybody's seen the violence, haven't they? Or do they only go after people who have money and cars? Like if poor children are in a village, is there any danger of violence to them, or is it only to people? Yes? There is? There is? Yes. So some people campaign against this. That's something to watch for. You know, someone really looking to protect the citizens. Some, I guess in the old days, they would go too extreme, but in the old days, you know, they would put somebody out in the public square and they'd have to be like their hands were here and their head was in the stock, and they'd have to sit there for a few days to show that they'd done something wrong. Yeah, then they used to burn people at the stake and everybody'd have to come out to see it. Some of these practices are barbaric, but it doesn't mean that the other extreme is good. It doesn't mean that because there were barbaric practices that we don't go against the thieves. In your area, do people object to violence and thievery? Or they just accept that as part of life? In Pinetown, what do they think there? They just accept it? They don't hope that or complain that we need to stop this? But what happens? Nobody does anything. Oh. So this is like the vigilante justice, which I guess it's, if there's, you know, that could go too far, because then the vigilantes can themselves decide that they're going to take things. But if there's nobody to protect them, we see this is what the ancient Vedic kings would do, is the first duty was to protect the people and make sure that the people are safe from criminals. But they have to set the example themselves that they are of a high character. And that's why we call the spiritual master an acharya, because he doesn't say, just like the parents, that they smoke cigarettes and drink and tell the children, don't do as I say, do as I do. No, they don't say that. They say, do as I say, not do as I do. But then if they say, look, I'm an authority, well, then the things I do become important. If I just say, hey, I'm a fool as a parent and you don't want to follow me, figure out your own way, they'd almost be better to tell them that. Because the things you do quite often speak louder than the things you say. One person said, your actions are screaming so loud I can't hear what you're saying. Right? The actions are, because the actions you do. They said that with Gandhi. The one woman said, can you tell my son not to eat sweets? He said, well, come back in 2 weeks and I'll tell him. He came back in 2 weeks. He says, you should not eat sweets. And the mother said, why did you have to wait 2 weeks? He says, well, myself, I was eating sweets. So I had to quit eating them myself before I could tell someone else to do it. So, these kinds of leaders may not be there. You have the leaders like Putin. He's so brave. He calls on the phone and sends more Russians to fight in Ukraine. But we see how it mentions in Bhagavad Gita, too, that the people of demoniac nature do horrible, unbeneficial things meant to destroy the world. You see, how many wars have been started by so many countries that were unnecessary? We look at the people here that, as Hitler, instead of protecting the citizens, he would kill some citizens and uplift others. Of course, it was the same under the apartheid here. The apartheid system was pretty much modeled after how the Nazi system was. You persecute certain races, you have absolute control. Was pretty much modeled after what Hitler did. And some people, you think there was one leader in Europe who made the best road system and the best economic system, and he took the country from 24% unemployment down to 0 unemployment, and they all got like a month of vacation. So that leader must have been a good leader, right? What's that? No, that was Hitler. But you see, what he did, quite often what they act like what the mafia does, is they do someone a favor, and now you owe them. They want you to owe them. They don't want to owe you. So what Hitler did, like with the Catholic Church, he says, I'll make it easy for you. We'll take all the Catholics, and I'll take 10% of their incomes out of their check and send it straight to you. So they thought, this is great. He says, I'll do what you want. But then when the time came around, he says, now, but you also have to do what I want. They call it like making the deal with the devil. We don't exactly believe in a devil, but the idea is the devil says, well, you know what? What things do you want? I'll give you fame, I'll give you money, I'll give you the things you want. But you have to sign here that I get your eternal soul. Right? So the devil gives them what they want, but you have to give him what he wants. So we don't need leaders like this. Quite often that's what they do, is they give you the things that you want, or they promise all kinds of things. It's like they say in India, too much devotion is a sign of a thief. You don't want a friend who always disagrees with you. But if someone's trying to exploit you for money, I tried this with one person. He was always like, can I borrow $50 and I need a ride to here? And I'm telling him how bad he is, just horribly talking him down. He says, you're probably right, but can I still borrow the $50? Because they want to get something from you. And that's what we have to be careful. The person that's the thief or the child molester, they try to do everything the authorities want them to do so that they can get away with certain other activities. So somebody that never disagrees with you, something's wrong. You don't want someone who always does, but when they're always trying to make it look like I'm on your side no matter what, then they're trying to get away with something. And so we need the leaders that aren't promising so many benefits, but promising to do something to protect the citizens. John F. Kennedy said, don't ask what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country. Because if the rich people are expecting tax breaks and the poor people are expecting free handouts, and they promise to both, then it's really going to be a problem. Probably the best one would say, we're going to have to increase the tax, decrease the benefits, and we're going to build the country on a strong economic base. That people can get benefits, but they have to come up with half of it themselves. Encourage them to do something for themselves. But unfortunately, the way things are, so many people would object to that. We find people usually come out on a very extreme political ideas, and it's easy to argue one extreme against each other. But the middle, where you have benefits, but you also allow people to make money, but you also require the people to do something, because the kings are setting the example by doing the duty. When we get in many of these countries the rights-based ethics, I want my rights, and you say, but you want your rights. But if the leader does his duty, and then the people under him, his ministers, do their duty, and you do your duty to the city, state, and country, then everybody automatically gets their rights. If everybody's trying to argue only for their rights, they're thinking, how can I deprive certain other people? So the worker all he can do is work, but the employer makes sure that he has food and clothing and shelter. They make sure they have that instead of just giving them money, because some of the times they take the money and spend it. They get the money on Friday, and Friday night and Saturday they're out at the bar, and like this is going to be a long weekend, they get paid today, and they'll spend the money the next few days, and then when Monday comes around and it's the first of the month and the rent is due, the money's gone. Whereas if they provided them with a place to stay and food and clothing and little or no money, they would actually be ahead. They say, we're going to give you money, but not enough money to support themselves. They'd be better off being assured of food, clothing, and shelter. Because quite often what happens is the people are promised so many benefits and that the employees get paid so little that what happens is that the employees pretend to work and the employers pretend to pay them. Is that pretty much how it is? They pretend to work and the employers pretend to pay them. Instead of being a system where people are encouraged for better work and people actually take care of their needs. So you need a leader who's concerned about the citizens, someone that thinks of them like they're his own children, someone that cares about them, and someone that's willing to guide them. Just like Prabhupada, when John Lennon and Yoko Ono came to Prabhupada, and some of the gurus love to flatter these personalities. It's like they said, can we be born together in our next lifetime? And other gurus say, yes, I can grant you that. And Prabhupada says, I can't grant you that. This depends on your karma and where you're going to take your next birth. He says, yeah, but we want assured we can take it together. He said, but I can't assure you that. Now he's being honest, and isn't that better than someone that promises them something, that someone actually gives them instruction about how they need to act? So this is how the leaders should be in this day and age and other age, but it was predicted that we wouldn't have leaders that were good. And so it's been discussed in these verses that just having democracy won't help, but just having impious kings won't help either. So the main thing is that the people need to know what an ideal leader is. It's just like if you ask me to pick the players for a cricket team. I really don't know how cricket is played, and so how am I going to pick the players? Let's see, maybe you and him, and how about me? I can look good in a cricket uniform. I have no idea how to play it though, but I can pretend till it's time to go into action, right? Isn't it? I can pretend, yeah, I got the uniform with a number on it. I'll have the number, it's the same number as some good player, and I'll carry the bat, and I'll go out on the field and look like I really know what I'm doing. And so we find that in this day and age, many of these people don't know what they're doing. And then they don't come out strong enough on the thieves, and they don't encourage the people to have to do their duty. They have to, like when there's a war. That's where the countries where the leaders are strong. When there's a war, they talk them into, just like when World War II came along. Most of the people in America wanted to stay out of Japan's wars and stay out of the wars against Germany and Europe. But when Japan bombed America in Pearl Harbor, Franklin Delano Roosevelt gave the speech where he said that we were suddenly what was the words he used? Attacked without warning. And instantly all the people wanted to sign up to fight back. They wanted to do their duty. But if the leader can't follow, how can the followers follow? Just like if somebody has a guru who can't practice spiritual principles, how can they follow? We found that was the trouble with the Catholic Church we were talking about, is that in the year 1500, Alexander Borgia became Pope Gregory, and he did all kinds of debauched things. So when they came to celebrate the 1500-year birth of Christ in Rome, they did all kinds of debauched things. Because if the leader, who is supposed to be divinely inspired, if he does debauched things, then wouldn't the followers also do the same thing? There was a one comedy movie I remember a long time ago where the guy says to the other people, he says, I'll walk this way. And he meant for them to go this way, walk like this, so they walk like that, right? They followed his example. What he meant was that walk, this way. But they walked just the way he was because they followed his example more than his words. And so it's the same thing. If the leaders don't show the people how to act, some simple things are missed. The oil companies have a stranglehold on economy. So, like in this country, instead of producing wind and solar, they have to import oil to do things. So when the rand drops by 20%, price of oil goes up. And they always infer that don't use the food supply to make fuel with. But the real truth is, because they feed grains to animals, it takes 20 pounds of grain to make a pound of beef. If you're not going to kill them, they don't need to eat grain. Let them eat grass. And so they waste so much of it that if instead of doing that, we could produce the same fuel out of grains and wouldn't have to import it from somewhere else. But as the rand goes down and the oil's being imported, that means that the cost goes up, even if it doesn't change in other countries. So it's like Prabhupada wanted devotees and countries to be self-sufficient. He told the leaders in Mauritius, they used to only grow sugarcane and export it and import all your food. And he told them, you're an island. If you import all your food, if the cost goes up, or there's bad weather or bad political situations, you're not going to have any food. The farther the food supply comes away from, the more chance you have for a danger. If there's trouble with transportation, if there's trouble with weather, if you grow your own food here, then you have it right there. It's like if there's a big problem with food, who would do better? The people in a village in India or the people in the West in a big city? What do you think? It's got to be the people in the big city, right? Because they have the modern supply, but the food may come from thousands of kilometers away. Some of these countries in Africa get their food from Ukraine, and Russia won't let the grain go out, and so they're starving. Whereas in India, what they do is why grains are the best food. They keep a big container of wheat, big container of rice, and a big container of dal, which is the best protein because it's alkaline, which is much more healthy for you than things that are acidic. And the rice and the dal and the wheat doesn't go bad until you cook it. Whereas if you're depending on meat, it goes bad and it has to be transported. So if you keep the grain lower on the food chain, you're going to be free from the starvation. But the leaders need to be educating people on this. They need to encourage them what to grow and what to eat. Because not only is it bad for the karma, and the animals don't like to be killed, those are two things, but it's bad for the environment, and it uses up so much of the resources. If you want to grow a tomato, it takes 8 gallons of water to make 1 pound of tomatoes. Cauliflower's 35 gallons. Beef is 1,800 gallons. It's 50 times as much as the cauliflower and the broccoli are. That much more water. So if there's a water shortage, what should we be eating? The dal and the cauliflowers and tomatoes, if you can. Tomatoes only go so far because it's not a protein food. But when you look at what it takes to grow these things, but leaders should be strong enough to stop crime and encourage people. If there's, and instead of giving free things, give people some land. It's like they say that if you give somebody some bread, they can eat. But if you provide them with seeds and they can grow their own grains, it's like Prabhupada said, when there's unemployment, people should be trained to grow their own food. Because you grow your own food, then you have something to eat. And we can grow the foods like potatoes and cauliflower and broccoli to sell. And if nobody wants to buy them, we can still eat our mistakes. But when you produce tires and nuts and bolts, you can't eat those. So the food can be eaten. And people should be trained to do the subsistence farming. Because if there's no job for them, they go live in a shack somewhere, whereas there could be a piece of land where they learn how to grow the food and they get the food that they need. So we see the leaders should be stopping crime and encouraging people who don't have jobs to learn how to grow food, to do the things that take care of themselves. And so we find someone was posting things about, we're happy with vegans because they don't at least eat meat, but milk has some special things. But the vegans complain that cows are mistreated, and quite often they're ungrateful. Look at it this way, people would never kill the dogs and sell them for dog meat, even though nobody milks the dogs, right? But when the cow is done giving milk, quite often people then sell it to be slaughtered. And if they did that with dogs in the countries that revere dogs, they would think that was so cruel of a thing to do. But in our farm, between Laguna Beach and San Diego is a place called Escondido. And there's a 25-acre farm there. And there's only a few cows. But Laguna only uses the milk from the cows that will never be killed. And vegan people seem to appreciate that. I don't think you have a big amount of vegans in this country, do you? Some of these countries, it seems like more people are going totally vegan than just going vegetarian. But we also tell people to do something that's sustainable, because you limit yourself in too many ways. It's better to be long-term vegetarian than short-term vegan. But we're a little slow on having cows and farms. We do have a Goshala though, don't we? But all our milk doesn't come from there, right? Because too much is needed, right? We'd have to increase that amount. But if people were encouraged, some of these African tribes revere the cows, like up in Kenya. They never kill their cows. They keep them and they sing songs to them and they revere them. It's not only, as some of the people say, that it's unnatural for us to milk animals because no other species milks Like we're milking a different species, the cow, and no other species besides humans do that. Is that true? No other species creates cows? Is that true or false? Does anybody know? Do any other species keep cows? Which ones do? None of them? Are humans the only ones? Do you ever see ants going up the tree carrying something? Anybody see that? They go up the tree in the bush and they're carrying something up. Who's seen that? Raise your hand. You know what they're taking? They're taking aphids up there. And the aphids milk the plant, and they take the aphids back in the hole at night and milk them and put them back. So ants use aphids for cows. But we use cows because it takes a lot of aphids to get a liter of milk. But an ant doesn't need a whole liter. He only needs a little. But the ants actually use cows. We're not the only ones. So that theory that humans are the only species that uses another species for cows is not actually true. So are there any questions or comments here? Who is ready to become a world leader now? Yes? But at least we know what leaders should be doing. Another thing we can do is like books go out to people. There was a picture of the Moscow Book Fair in '75, and the mayor of Moscow had gotten a Bhagavad Gita. He was reading it. So when the hardline communists came to take over from Gorbachev, this person was Boris Yeltsin. And he got up on top of the tank and he said, "You will turn around and go back. This is an illegal move." And he stopped them. So we read that. So we may give books out, maybe like even the sets. It's like Vibhu Chaitanya said they collected for 80 sets of books in Santon. Maybe if we get at least Gita or sets to some of the politicians, a whole set is there, they may read some of this. It's worth the chance, because if they read some of this and see what's the ideal thing to do, then we can change all these countries in the world. Boris Yeltsin stopped the hardline communists from taking over, who would have stopped the book distribution and stopped the spreading of Krishna consciousness, and that didn't happen. So we have to think of how sometimes when we collect money for books, put it in the hands of somebody important, because they may just catch it. We see that Mangosuthu Buthelezi, he was a pretty tough guy, but boy, he loved to come to the temple. And he loved the philosophy, didn't he? Anybody here met him when he came? I met him in '95. We had lunch down below, and he loved coming here, didn't he? So, you know, you can get the books into the hands of these people. They may read some of it, and things can change. Just look like Boris Yeltsin stopped the communists from retaking Russia. And even though they're having problems today and fighting Ukraine, they're not stopping our movement in any way. Between the old Soviet countries, 70% of our devotees outside of India are in those countries. That includes America, South America, Bangladesh, all of Africa, all of Europe. 70% are still in those countries. More than 2 out of 3 are there in those countries. So a huge amount are there. So changes can be done by putting the books in people's hand. Because if you talk to someone, they may forget what you say, and they may be thinking about how they're going to argue with you. But it's hard to argue with a book. I'm going to argue. I don't like what you're saying. People read it and they take it in. And if it's sitting there, they may read it today, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, next month. But eventually somebody will read something, and that will make an impression upon them. Any question or comment? Raghunath Bhatta took some notes. Any questions or comments there?
He was making some nice points. The one thing that struck me about vegans, and many people are becoming vegans and
Yes.
following this, and they're concerned about animals. But as devotees, especially when it comes to Mahaprasadam, then people who are vegans, they want to have nothing to do with it,
Yes.
But that's not a good sign. That's like offensive to the Maha.
Well, that's why Prabhupada says we go in like a needle, out like a plow.
No, I mean, I'm talking about...
It's so hard to get people to become vegetarians that what we do is have to create, vegan options for them. And say, so because if you start with trying to object to the fact that they've not eating any milk, if you start with that, then you simply create a problem.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about devotees.
People devotees. Okay.
That outsiders I'm not concerned about because they're not going to change so easily.
Well,
and when devotees don't.
Yes.
Then that's offensive.
That's why those people are swayed when, like in Laguna Beach, and people say, well, they're vegans. They say, well, because the animals are mistreated. But we say we only use milk that comes from our cows. And they say, well, you know what, that's good, we can appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then they don't feel, because Prabhupada wanted us to start, it may be difficult to switch, but we should have that in mind to eventually protect cows. Instead of complaining that people don't drink the milk, we should be protecting cows so that we can give them cruelty-free milk.
Yeah. That's also a difficult thing to do, protect cows.
It's difficult, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
You have a bigger crew here and more money inflow than Laguna Beach, and they do it.
Yeah,
you get a little less milk, you don't get big amounts of curd sabji, but it definitely has an influence on people, and it's definitely what Prabhupada wanted.
Yeah, but also Prabhupada, he himself drank milk. Not that he didn't know, what cows are going through. He was not, not that he didn't know what they're going through. He also took milk.
Yes.
So.
But he also wanted us to do that. If we can't do it, I try not to go too hard against, some people say, oh, why do they don't have enough milk? Like what they do is, because in Laguna, they only use the milk from those cows. So the one person didn't get any curd sabji. So he put an article on the Sampradaya Sun that in Laguna Beach, they do a soybean abhishek. And so Tukaram temple president asked me, he said, why do people keep asking me about this soybean abhishek? I said, well, it must be the article that this person put. So he called the person and says, why did you write this article? He said, well, I didn't get any paneer sabji. He said, well, then why didn't you write an article about that? So then the guy called me and he was angry. I told Tukaram about the article. I said, no. Once you write an article, you're not allowed to get mad at people for talking about it. So, it's a complicated issue, and if people don't want to take any milk, then, we have to respect that and tell people, especially people who come for the first time, let them know there's vegan options and be respectful of that and think of ways and means how we can switch to it's like some of the temples in America only use that, or some only use it for the deities, and some don't do any of it. But it's a good idea to have that in mind, to at least be willing to come up with that, because someone may give some land, someone may give some cows. Bhakti Swami wanted to start farms for Africans and local people, and so it should be a part of our plan. Even if we can't do it today or even next year, it should be a part of our plan.
Yeah, what I was really speaking about was, that all what you said is good, but we're meant to be as devotees, even if we're vegan, we're meant to be respectful to the, when we're offering the prasadam,
yes,
at least be respectful. Oh, I have nothing to do with it. That's not good. That's offensive.
Yeah, but we have to approach it in a way that's understanding. And we found that in Laguna. When you tell people that this all comes from our cows, they say, you know what, I respect that. And it is something that Prabhupada wanted us to do, and we may not be able to do it right away, but it should be something that's in our plan and our purview, and Krishna will help us do it somehow. I think it is, because I try not to go, I don't try to criticize the vegans, and some people criticize the temple that only uses their own cows. Some people criticize the temple that buys milk from the store. I don't try to engage in any of the criticisms, but I definitely see the value of doing that. People who says, oh no, the cruelty to the cows, when you tell them that these cows will never be killed, they says, you know what, I'll eat some of that. So, we want to look for reasons for people to come and if they're all vegetarian and don't drink milk, we're happy they're at least not killing animals. We have to be happy with that part and let them know, oh, we have two kinds of vegan and a non-vegan, which would you prefer? We have to not tell them they're being offensive, and because if they've done that, that's a big step. You're lucky enough to get any kind of vegetarian in this country, aren't you? Many of the Indians, I see them down there buying all kinds of meat. So if somebody is a vegan and won't drink milk, they're superior to that, aren't they? If somebody comes here and they says, well, they'll eat the prasadam, but they won't drink the milk because they're total vegan, aren't they still ahead of the people who will eat all of our prasadam but go home and eat meat? We don't start out with people telling them how offensive they are to eat animals. Even though it may be true, it's not a good starting point. I think it's a delicate issue. We want to steer people that way, and we want to consider all the points. We don't want to insult people who become vegan. We want to let people know that we're trying to protect cows, and therefore that won't be an issue. And so we have to keep an open mind to all the different avenues on that. But I don't think it's good to argue with people who've made the commitment, a strong commitment, not to eat any meat, including no milk. To argue that point with them will simply create a wall. It's better to just let them take the other, isn't it? I think it's better. And then we can work on the other, getting more. We have some protected cows, don't we? Oh, a devotee, yeah. That's, okay, all right.
Specifically talking about, because as devotees, we're meant to
Yes.
be respectful.
Yes.
I've been serving these things, I know. So
Yes.
people like this, they just want to have nothing to do with it. That means disrespectful.
They could say it like, if you can't eat the stuff, you can respect it and say, I respect this, but like some people, like for me, I can't eat the nuts. I can eat the nut butter, but I don't insult the peanuts. I love them, but I can't eat them unless they're made into butter. So yeah, you're not saying that if they don't eat it, at least they can be respectful for it.
That's what your point also, that's good.
Yes.
Be respectful.
Yeah, all the people can be respectful. But I don't think it hurts to try to have a goal of getting protected cows. We already have some, don't we? It's already an idea. It's not like we're against having protected cows. It just may be difficult to totally do it that way. But if people demanded that, then they'd all be that way, wouldn't they? That's why we have to educate the people on cow protection. Because if people decided they're only going to drink milk from protected cows, then the dairies would have to comply. Hare Krishna. We'll go respect the prasadam now. How many devotees here are vegans?
Ganga was one of them.
What?
Ganga should avoid it.
Who is?
Ganga.
Ganga. Oh, Ganga Mata? She does? What does that mean?